All right, and we should be live now. Just give it a second on the YouTube end of things, but yeah, no crashes, so that's how we know we're good. Yeah, after a good week off. Yeah, how have you been, my friend?
Yeah, been good. Busy with work. Trying to keep up with everything, but yeah, no, I've been quite well. How are you traveling?
I've been good. I've been good. As I've told you off air, I've got a new computer, so I've been enjoying that, and I'm also been back to buying some retro games. So
Excellent,
I just recently
excellent.
bought a PS3 game called Knight's Contract. I don't know if you remember the developer all too much, but they were the developers that made that infamous game that Sony showed off for the PS3 showcase that had the giant enemy crab.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
remember that one?
yeah. So they made quite a few PS3 exclusive games, and Knight's Contract was one of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How are you finding it so far?
Oh, I haven't got it yet. I won't get it till the 18th. But the reason I got it is because it's actually valuable. So right now it actually is going up in price on eBay. So yeah, but I got it for the memes because it actually looks quite funny, and I bet I'm gonna be using that to make some content out of.
Oh, right. That'll
Yeah,
be good. Hopefully you enjoy that one.
yeah. What about you? What have you been playing, or what have you been up to?
I haven't been able to do much gaming the last couple of weeks. I've played a little bit more in Lost Judgment. A bit more of Dave the Diver with some new content coming soon. Um, that's pretty much it. Been a very quiet couple of weeks for me for gaming.
So just a little bit just just been enjoying life, I guess.
Yeah, been pretty busy, so I'd say life has been in getting its pound of flesh out of me. So,
Understandable. Uh, but
um,
yeah. So as for the topics, so I wanted to kind of get into the biggest news story that happened recently, which was the release of Sony's financials.
yeah,
Yeah. I didn't go too much into their financials because I'll be honest, that kind of stuff bores me when reading about all that. But there were some key interesting things like the new percentage of users that were.
yeah.
Yeah, so stuff like that. So I'll have you lead into this, talk about like what you thought that were positives, and then we'll go into.
Ah, yeah. Um, yeah. So some interesting stuff. They had a near record year, a near record quarter three in terms of console sales. They have had a record quarter three in terms of revenue. Um, the performance was good enough that they updated their forecast for the end of year by a few percent. Um, the main striking things was that they had their sales were up for gaming and network services 16%, and their operating income was up 37% year on year. And they've increased their forecast by 3% for their sales and 7% for their operating income for the year, which should have them land somewhere close to a record year, depending on how the FX rate goes. It'd be about $30 billion revenue. Their operating income percentage is going to go close to 8.5%, I think, a year, based on their forecast, and their EBITDA percentage will be over 10%, which is showing that the recovery efforts or the correction efforts that they've been trying to implement in
Are working.
PlayStation since Hiroki Totoki took over are working. All of this in quite a challenging economic environment globally. But it's again highlighted the point that their hardware is selling well, very well. We had to go all the way back to quarter three financial year 2016 for PlayStation to find where they did 9.7 million units sold. So that's a many years back, and that was just after they did their first price drop and released the PS4 Slim. So um, yeah, it's indicating that the PS5 Pro uh, certainly was accepted in the market by consumers. That the pricing point was accepted. I wouldn't say that people are ecstatically happy about it, but when you put that kind of unit sold up, it certainly shows that it was accepted in the marketplace. They've done some good work to reduce their costs. Their inventory's down nearly 50% for PlayStation 5 and associated inventory, which will make it a massive impact on a massive improvement on their operating cash flow, which has been something that they were working hard to sort out. At the end of March 2024, they'd gotten their combined free cash flow close to break even. Their operating cash flow was covering their investing cash flow, which basically means that they were generating enough money to pay their debts that they'd incurred, that they'd carried from those couple of years, 2020 to 2022, where they'd had to basically bankroll a heap of the additional costs associated with the changes coming out of that period. It's suggesting and showing that they're in a position where PlayStation is able to stand on its own feet quite well in all aspects, and it's not relying on funding from anywhere else. So,
the interesting thing is that they even admit though that it's still a little bit behind PS4's performance, but that it's done better than they thought it would this year. So
yeah. So again, they've done over 20 million units in a calendar year. I don't know if they'll crack 20 million units in a financial year, but
they probably won't. Not this year, at least.
No, it won't. But it's over 75 million units sold PS5, which means it's ranging up on the PlayStation 3 lifetime units. I doubt it'll pass that in the January quarter, but it should. In the March quarter, but it should get past it in the June quarter, which is the first quarter of their next financial year. There's some positives still to be realised coming up with this correction, or the corrections in their financial performance, because they're still reviewing their cost inputs. They're still looking at their pricing points. They're reducing their expenditure in certain other areas. So it's and this December quarter information doesn't have the most recent round of changes that were affected in January showing through in the numbers, so that'll flush through. The monthly active users went up a fair chunk.
Surprisingly, after they were going down a bit, and in the opposite direction.
Yeah, their network services revenue went up over 20% as well, which shows that the attachment rate for the monthly active users for engaged with the PlayStation Plus options is staying strong. The price rise hasn't lost anyone. In fact, people have accepted that as well. I'm not saying that they like it, but they accept it.
I for one could agree with those people. I don't like it. I just accept it because that's the only way I can play online.
Yeah, so there's you talk about percentage shifts. You go from 109, they're up to 129 million counts, the highest that they've had on record for PlayStation, and then that's just on the PlayStation 5 platform. Yeah. That's not including people that have then hooked in a PSN that are playing on PC.
Yeah, because so they did count the Helldivers players as part of that.
Yeah, so if we're on PC and created a PSN for doing Helldivers or some of the other games that they've released that they've said you need to have it, they're not counting that in the monthly active users. They're only counting the ones that are on the PlayStation 5 platform. So there was a 5% increase in that, then the 20% increase, and the price rise wasn't 20%. So there's an element of that 20% network services revenue increase that's not related to the price rise. So it indicates there are new players coming on board with it. The interesting one out of the Q&A session was that when he said, more than 40% of users who purchased a PS5 during that quarter were new.
Yeah.
That's 9.5 million units sold, and it's just short of 4 million new users. That's a pretty decent whack in one quarter to add to your to your player base. It's quite the telling improvement in that respect.
I wonder if a lot of them have come from like people who wanted a new platform from like either like just like wanting to leave the Xbox ecosystem or like Nintendo or whatever, because that's a pretty big chunk of new people to just decide to buy a PlayStation.
Yeah, well, that's the push into China, India, and a couple of other regions.
Right.
There's an element of those switching over from Xbox potentially. We won't know the full extent of that because PlayStation won't know that, but Xbox will never tell you. But yeah, even if 20% of that is new gamers, like brand new to gaming, that's still nearly 2 million people.
Well, the reason I brought up Xbox is because they also posted they didn't post their financials, but I believe people were like speculating because of the loss in console sales that they've been having.
Yeah, well, they're down negative 29% year on year, and that was last year. It was negative 14% or something like that, and month on month they've had massive negatives in their hardware area, and the units. There's depending on who you read or what you watch, the difference between PlayStation 5 units sold lifetime to date and Xbox Series units sold lifetime to date is somewhere between 25 to 30 million Xboxes and 75 million PlayStations. So there's the vagary around that number. Even if it's 30 to 35 million, that's still a massive gap. And 30 to 30, let's say for conversation's point, is 30 million units Xbox Series consoles sold, and that's still 30 million units sold, but that's not a that's not a peak performance point if the sales have crashed out at this level already for them. It would be a concerning issue, and you would be having some pretty serious discussions about whether you bother continuing or not. But the player base over there is, the amount of Game Pass subscribers is sort of stalled in and around 30 million mark as well. So and PC is where they're growing that at the moment, but the people that are jumping onto PC would potentially be the jumping off the Series console. So
yeah,
and 60 something, was it 67 or 70 something percent of Xbox Series consoles sold were Series S. So that's its own conversation, its own set of problems, I guess. But the way that the PlayStation has performed in this quarter, particularly the December quarter, where again challenging economic situation, you've seen from the reports out of all the other major publishers, some have had good results, some have had not so great results.
Sony also stated, I believe, that they expect GTA to also boost the console performance from people buying when GTA 6 releases.
Yeah, so when GTA 6, a lot of people are speculating that it's going to make a massive jump in units sold, and again, depending on who you listen to and what you read, it's going to be the second coming of certain deities. If you believe some of them, when GTA 6 launches, it'll move some consoles, but I don't think it's going to move.
I think it will, to be honest. look at the popularity that GTA still has and how many people are still buying it. It still tops the gaming charts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it tops the gaming charts. It's sold an awful lot. It's been around for a very long time, but it's not like it's expensive to buy.
Oh, yeah, of course, but still, it's a very
GTA
popular
6.
series at this point in time, especially because of the online.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I'm not convinced it's going to sell 20 million units in a quarter.
Oh no, I
Some
don't think it'll
people
probably sell that. I
expect
think
it
at
will.
most it'll probably sell like 2 to 3 million consoles.
Yeah, so if it cranks a, maximum, I suspect a maximum of 3 million units attributed directly just for GTA 6. If it does that, and because we're getting to a point where by then there'll be 85 plus million, potentially 83 to 85 million units out for the PlayStation 5. I don't think it's going to move the needle on an awful lot. It'll be mostly people on a PS4 that have played the game that want to shift up, or people that are on other platforms that want to jump on. So you might see another replication of the 30 to 40% of the units sold to new users. So you might end up with another 8 or 9 million potential quarter, depending on if it releases in the right quarter. But yeah, GTA 6. I'm not suggesting it's not going to be a big deal, but I'm not convinced it's going to be as big a deal as some people make it out to be. And yeah, it'll make some impact, but it's not going to be a 10 million plus unit impact, I don't think. But that's September to November.
It possibly could though, because when you think about it, since it's going to be exclusive to the PS5 and the Series X, it does have the potential to bring people from last gen over.
Potentially, yeah. But if it's but this is the challenge, I guess. If Take-Two has managed to convince Xbox that it doesn't need to go on a Series S and only works on a Series X, then they've done an amazing job, because Xbox hardly ever bends their knee on that one for anything.
Yeah.
But we don't know between now and then if Xbox is even going to get it on day one. There's still a bit of vagary around whether PlayStation's got their claws into it for a timed exclusive, and even if it's a 6 months timed exclusive, that's all the difference. So they've definitely got the marketing deal for it, and so we'll see. I guess we'll see. But if they've got something similar to what they did with GTA 5, then it'll move a lot of unit sales in the game itself. But yeah, it might push.
If
be hard, but
if it's enough for Sony to feel confident in their console performance, I don't know. I feel like they might have, like, Rockstar might have something on their hands then.
Yeah, well, that's true. We'll see we'll know when Sony releases their forecast for the next financial year, what they think it's going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it comes out, because there's also the speculation that might get pushed back into next year.
Yeah, well, the Take-Two financials suggested that it was still slated to happen at that calendar year, fall of calendar year 25, which is somewhere, what is that, September to November?
Yeah.
And a lot of the back end conversations at the moment are saying it's like late October, early November.
That's what I'm saying, because people seem to think that, like, that it might get pushed back just so they can clean up a bit more of the game.
It is. I mean, anything that late in the year is always an opportunity to be pushed back into calendar year 26. But it would they would have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Or they'd have to make that decision before they start the marketing push. And if it's say it's at the start of November, the marketing push would start in mid to late September.
I would think with the recent games that Take-Two is going to be publishing this year, that they wouldn't need to publish GTA 6 this year either if they had a choice.
Well, if you got Borderlands 4 launching at the back end of September, and they're gonna do it, as they said, they're gonna do their own dedicated state of play on PlayStation. So obviously there's a marketing deal there.
Yeah.
Sometime in between March and May, then one would suspect it'll be in May. That's 4 months out from a September launch, and they Take-Two bought Gearbox specifically so they could launch a couple of games and have some revenue come in before they got to the GTA 6. So if Borderlands 4 is back at right at the back end of September, I do not see GTA 6 coming out before that.
Right.
Otherwise, it'll just
Yeah,
they launch them
that's
both
true.
in the same month. That's just stupid. Borderlands 4, they're pushing it, giving it a fairly decent push, so they obviously want it to stand on its own 2 feet and be successful. So
Well, Borderlands is already successful as is. I mean, it sells like hotcakes when the new entry comes out. So I would expect Borderlands 4 to.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that it won't do well by any means. It's more you wouldn't want to have it happen 2 weeks before GTA 6 shows up.
Yeah, because anything that releases near GTA 6 will get eaten up.
Yeah, so if you want to be 2 or 3 weeks before GTA 6 launches and have not a game like GTA 6 coming out, so you'd want to be 2 to 3 weeks before GTA 6 launches, or you want to be sort of 6 weeks post GTA 6 launch. Because everybody who jumps in the first couple of weeks is going to grab it, play the crap out of it, and should be finished by then, and then looking for the next thing.
Well, it depends on depends if they add in the online aspect into GTA 6 too.
Yeah, and how much content is in that at the time when they launch it.
Yeah.
Because remember when GTA 5's online component came out?
But that was because Rockstar wasn't prepared for the online aspect back then.
Yeah. Oh, not so much how it performed. It was just the content.
That's what I mean. Like they didn't have the content there at launch that they were promising either. So.
Yeah, so if they've got that sorted out and it all comes out in one hit, that'll be,
Yeah.
You'd want to be 6 to 8 weeks post-launch before if you're putting out a different game, you'd want to do that. So.
Well, I would think that they would probably, especially after the recent purchase of the the modding devs that did the role play part of GTA. That was its own separate thing.
Yeah. But yeah, that's another telling point of the time frame at the back end of the year, and it may slip into next year, calendar year. I suspect they want to have it out.
I'd say if we don't get a trailer like around summertime for like GTA 6, then they'll probably get pushed back.
I'd be surprised if they're not talking about it at the Game Awards in June, or Summer Games Fest in June, whatever it's called, Keeling's June event. If they're not talking about it there, and they're not talking about it at GDC, what's the other event that happens around June? Yeah, something like that. There's a major gaming convention that happens around June, July. I just can't remember which one it's called, where they it's not really open to the public, but all the devs and business associated with gaming all get together and they see all the bits and pieces that are coming. And yeah, if it's not being talked about openly there, where people are like playing it, then I would be very surprised if it did make it in this calendar year. But stranger things have happened.
So okay, I'll leave it off with this question for this subject, and then we'll move on to the next. But so if GTA 6 does get pushed back, do you think Sony will have to put out a statement like about like any performance dips that they might see in the future?
Only if it shifts out beyond March 2026.
Yeah.
That would have a realignment within the 2025 financial year, which ends at the end of March 2026, and the performance, like the financial performance impacts, they would have to tell us about, and whether they have any other changes that are driven because of that. Again, Sony's got the marketing deals to so many of these third-party games. They also need to be mindful about when they release their own games. So they want to try and avoid having the Horizon curse happen too many times, where they've got a first-party game launching up against somebody else's and not succeeding.
Yeah, that's happened quite a few times.
Yeah, it has, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. But moving on to the next subject. I want to talk about the new announcement that Sony has with Kadokawa, where they'll be publishing some games, which it's pretty interesting because the way that was announced, because like it's a bit like vague in terms of how that's gonna work out.
Yeah, it is. Did you want me to start with anything specific, or do you want me to just?
I mean, if you have something to say, you can go in. But I was kind of like interesting how that would work financially. Like, are they gonna split the revenue that they share? Because like, it's Kadokawa's devs working on these games, but Sony's gonna be publishing them potentially. Or
yeah, so that it would because it's only an ownership percentage through shares. It's not an outright purchase. Any engagement they have will just be contracted the same as they would otherwise, but for the agreement that one's going to do one thing and the other's going to do the other. So I read from the announcement. So Sony and Kadokawa, they're going to adapt Kadokawa's IP into live-action films and TV dramas globally and co-produce anime works. So that's Sony TV and music.
Yeah.
Movies. Expand global distribution of Kadokawa's anime works through the Sony group. So Kadokawa had a subscription service with 6 or 7 million subscribers for their anime in Japan, in South Korea. So obviously that stuff going on to Crunchyroll to be distributed primarily through Crunchyroll, distributed globally. Crunchyroll's got 13 or 14 million subscribers, or they'll take it and through their licensing arrangements with like Netflix and Disney and others, they'll make some of that available to the Western, or to the globe, to the world really, through those distribution deals. So there'll be obviously some English dubs and subs and all that sort of stuff that needs to be done, and Funimation will probably take care of most of that. Expand publishing of Kadokawa's games. Kadokawa makes an awful lot of games that never make it to the West. They never get localized for North America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Australasia.
Yeah, that usually happens with these Japanese developers.
Yeah, so they've got, and that's not just on console, there's PC and mobile and others as well. So that's an opportunity there for PlayStation, or for Sony rather, through PlayStation and Sony Music to do that and get some publishing to arrangements in place for that. And then the other main point here is they got develop human resources to promote and expand virtual production. So that will be leaning more into PlayStation's really good at finding and hiring top talent to work on certain development points. Kadokawa also makes pachinko machines and stuff like that. So it's not restricted just to putting video games or animations on a gaming console or platform. They've also got other things that they do which have that sort of animation work in them. So they're the main points that were announced. How does it work in the business and capital alliance part? Sony is now the largest individual shareholder or institutional shareholder for Kadokawa, with just over 10%. So how that works effectively is, from a business perspective, any dividends or returns of capital or anything like that, Sony gets a cut out of that, and it's sort of like having an ownership stake in a business to make sure that the business is performing well. There'll be contractual arrangements where, through this agreement, Sony will, as I said before, apply certain parts of their business to either do the promotion of or the distribution of licensing through their current arrangements and contacts to pick up a lot of Katakawa's anime and IP and push on from there. Um, the financial impact will be that it will just show up in Sony's financial reports the same as if they were doing an agreement with Take-Two, or Sony Music was doing a licensing agreement with MGM Grand or someone like that. It's not that it's an entire equity-based arrangement, so that the benefits of revenue received and all that sort of stuff will show up in the financial performance, profit and loss. And likewise, Sony as a whole will have the ability to do certain, what would you say, certain strategic or key business opportunities. So they'll get first option at a lot of things that Katakawa are doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Sony is instructing them that they have to or that they would.
Yeah.
Particularly where they're...
That's what I was thinking, because they do have their own internal publisher technically, because Spike Chunsoft also publishes some games, but they also let publishers publish some of their games too. And and then you would also think that FromSoft would also like still work with Bandai here and there.
Well, that's the interesting piece about it, is there's still arrangements in place that they're not going to tear up, because there's no point, there's no benefit to removing those arrangements. And the interesting part with this is how the interaction with Bandai Namco will proceed, because Bandai Namco have a huge amount of IP around anime and that as well, and they've got a really strong relationship with Sony as well, in similar fashion. So the Bandai Namco is a lot more advanced in that. But you're right, Spike Chunsoft has got their arrangements that they can do. Spike Chunsoft they did the most recent Dragon Ball Z game under license from, remember who owns the license for Dragon Ball Z now?
It's a manga publisher company.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name because it always slips me.
I know Toei Animation does the.
No, they do the anime, but they don't own it outright.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always slips me for that company. Yeah, that's why I kind of feel like this thing is kind of interesting, because like, are they gonna be like, I don't know. I feel like because like there was that recent thing about PS Plus that I saw the recent Mystic video where he kind of pointed out that Sony hasn't touched because I guess they own the publishing rights for Armored Core 1, but they haven't touched it since like they published it on the PS1. But recently, thanks to the Katakawa deal, I think he was speculating that they may have been allowed to finally put that on PS Plus and like do something with that IP with FromSoft's approval, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there was some interesting commentary coming out of that. Like you saw at the State of Play, Armored Core 1, 2, and 3 coming to PS Plus Classics.
Yeah.
It's like straight away tick. There's some result of that. And that's the whole with the partnership and the rearrangement is PlayStation can basically go, well, we want access to this, and this, and it's less around Sony having to pay a premium to get something that they already effectively have some part of ownership in, and then more so saying, well, we're a major shareholder, you will give us XYZ without us having to pay extra for it. The owner is Bird Studios, Shueisha.
Yeah, Shueisha, that's the manga company.
Yeah. But the amount of different licensing things that are in place for Dragon Ball, but Spike Chunsoft did the most recent game, and that I'm pretty sure they did.
They also do a lot of smaller anime games too, like point and click adventure type of games.
Yeah. Oh, they do.
Yeah. That's why that's
Like,
why I was kind of curious on how this publishing deal would work with like Sony, because like Sony's also has like they're not just PlayStation, of course, because they also have Aniplex, which publishes games too. So would some of
yeah,
those games line up with them or with the?
possibly it may be the impact will be it's the right way of saying this. Some games and some IP they don't have like the publisher doesn't do publishes it, they don't publish it all globally, so because they don't always have the distribution chains or the ability to do it. So it may be that Spike Chunsoft continue to do their primary focus is Japan, South Korea, Asia, and Sony does the publishing for that stuff for Europe, Africa, Middle East, North America, South America, etc. So it may be that they split it, which is becoming more common.
Yeah.
But the other funny thing about this too is where does the where's the limitation of what they're gonna do, and how is it gonna be? How's it going to be seen? Because Bandai and has been doing an awful lot of publishing work for. You said before they do an awful lot of publishing work for
Yeah, the most recent one. The
Uh,
most recent one was with Armored Core 6 too. So
yeah, so they did that from that. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, sorry, was published by Bandai Namco, but was made by Spike Chunsoft. But so the big games, it seems like Spike is doing it outsourced. There's like a heap of their smaller stuff is self-published. But they published Anonymous Code, though they didn't make that game. The last one they did publish and develop themselves, and was a global release on multiple platforms, was AI the Somnium Files.
yep, I remember that one.
That one was back in 2022, but no, I mean Spike does a heap of small publishing for the like Majors and Good Feel and a heap of other smaller local Japanese developers. So it's possible that they because they have a very long list of the Western games that they've published in Japan for other studios, including like The Witcher 2, Darksiders 2, way back when. They did Cyberpunk 2077, Disco Elysium, Baldur's Gate 3, PlayStation 5 version was published through Spike Chunsoft in Japan. So that may be where that publishing arrangement has a shift. It may not be that PlayStation's doing the publishing. PlayStation might just be doing the work or providing the expertise.
Right. I actually had no idea that they didn't publish some games themselves. Huh.
No, they've they do the localization for some interesting for a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking. So they did Divinity: Original Sin 2, Cadence of Hyrule, Indivisible, Cyberpunk 2077, Dying Light 2, Stay Human, Ark Survival Ascend is on the cards to be done. That's just in more recent times, but they've done
I guess
Metro
this has some
Exodus,
potential
Skylines.
for Sony in the Japan side then.
They did The Witcher 3 localization for Japan. Wasteland 2 director's cut. So they've done it a few bit. That's just Spike Chunsoft. I mean,
Yeah.
the other Katakawa's got 6 or 7 gaming studios that they own. I mean, like, this is just talking gaming. The more broader impact is around their anime IP.
Oh yeah, but I want to talk
movies.
more gaming stuff because yeah.
Yeah, I suppose I'm just referencing that because the purpose of the arrangement was not to benefit gaming specifically. The purpose of the arrangement is to more benefit anime, TV, and movies in that area.
Right.
But yeah, the game.
That's why I kind of feel like this would align more with the Aniplex's like games output because with the Katakawa's mobile game developer, at least they can use that too for Aniplex.
Yeah. And through this arrangement, so because Katakawa's got its own arrangements with other companies where they own controlling interests and have arrangements and all that sort of stuff themselves. So it's yeah, there's sort of some reach through stuff happening, or that will happen.
You would think that
yeah,
you would think that would be the case.
Yeah, I mean, this like they've Katakawa just recently announced that they're going to merge Dwango, Bookwalker, and Katakawa connected into one company, and just call it Dwango. And then so that's on their book publishing stuff. So that synergy, or that simplification of that area is going to have some impacts there. But the gaming stuff is more specifically Spike and From Software are the two major ones, and Spike seems to churn out a decent amount, and From Software's got, they've got
that's their golden goose right there.
Yeah, it is. But as I was saying in a previous show, when gaming's not got a major release, gaming makes less than 10% of the revenue for Katakawa. So if this gives an opportunity for, Miyazaki to have an opportunity to concentrate on doing a Bloodborne 2 or a Bloodborne successor or something like that, because he gets the time and he wants to do it, and there's some guidance from PlayStation Productions to assist in any way, or XDev gets involved in helping out in these. I mean, you've seen what Lost Souls Aside looks like, and that's one developer plus 15 to 20 people from XDev making that game. That's not bad. That's not a bad outcome. So there's that arrangement where Katakawa's gaming businesses can get direct access now a lot easier to PlayStation Productions, PlayStation XDev, PlayStation Studios.
And the same goes vice versa, apparently, too, with Sony getting access to like some of the IP they already own, but probably didn't want to touch, like, for contractual reasons.
Yeah, like you said, Armored Core 6 wasn't a bad one.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was a bad one. But if that mech genres, there's a couple of games coming. It seems to be getting a revival. It might be that they can get back on board with that, or the Bloodborne again. That's a PlayStation-owned IP, but you wouldn't want anyone other than the person who's really good at making it to make it again. So, I don't know. It's
you would expect Sony to announce like where this would actually like impact their financials, right? Like in terms of like what's actually like driving their financials upwards or like downwards, in terms of like what they're doing with Katakawa, right?
If it was, well, I suspect we'll see it in the commentary where it has an impact, but I don't think they'll subset it out or report on it individually, because I don't really think it's going to make that big enough impact in the overall space. But it's not like they're going to have it as a separate entity to sort through that. It may be that they say, we start to see this much revenue or this much percentages come through from this arrangement, but I'd like to be wrong on this, because I'd really be interested to see how it performs, but I don't think we as the public are going to find out that this deal is generating 3% of their underlying revenue or something like that, because it's going to be spread across all the different units in such a capacity that it'll make 4/5 of not a huge amount of difference until we get to a point where they're saying, we've had 3 million new subscribers to Crunchyroll because of this arrangement, or we've now got all of Katakawa's back catalogue of gaming is coming into the PlayStation Plus, or rotating through PlayStation Plus, or things like we said the other, as I said, we saw the first 3 Armored Cores are coming into PlayStation Plus Classic. I mean, it might, the next step might be all of the not Demon Souls, Dark Souls games are coming to PlayStation Plus or something like that.
I don't think they probably could get that approved without Bandai giving them the green go for that.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is with those older games that weren't originally published digitally, but they are digitally available now. Is how does that arrangement work?
I think when it comes to the Dark Souls franchise specifically, I think Bandai owns the IP and the publishing rights, so I think that's where that goes. But
well, that's then leading back into the conversation around what does the publishing piece mean with this arrangement, and it may be that those things can be brought back into the fold with PlayStation's influence, or it may be that they just don't get it at all. But it certainly wouldn't. It wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility again.
Because you would think that Sony would work with, like, in terms of like with From stuff, like Sony would work with them with Armored Core and Bloodborne and some of like maybe possibly Demon Souls, but I doubt it. But like,
yeah,
that's just on the gaming side. They would probably also work with them on the anime side, because I think they're also implementing a way for like people to buy manga too. So wouldn't put it past them to put like a lot of Kadokawa's manga into Crunchyroll service.
Yeah, I expect that will be one of the first things that'll happen is it'll get westernized, or get localized for the Western audiences, and then bang, it'll just be a massive uptick in new stuff on Crunchyroll. And likewise, Aniplex will have an opportunity to start making some anime-based games for mobile, and then yeah, I don't expect this to change the trajectory of what PlayStation Studios are working on.
Oh yeah, I don't expect that either, but you would think that they would publish like some games though, at the very least.
Oh yeah, just as I said at the start, there's a huge amount of games that are Japan only, and PlayStation would be able to grab those and put them, localize them for world distribution, and quite quickly be able to do that. And it wouldn't surprise me if any new games coming from FromSoft or Spike or any of the other studios that they've got, if any of the new games coming that they don't continue with using Bandai Namco as the publisher, it'll just depend on what the game is.
Yeah.
I mean, Bandai's just brilliant at publishing fighting games because they're really good at that. They've got a heritage in that. PlayStation I can't think of the last time they actually did a fighting game.
I think the last one that they actually did themselves was PlayStation All Stars.
Yeah, so it might be best to just not fiddle around in areas unknown and leave that arrangement in place. So, but again, look, they all play nice with each other. And they've all got their own workloads and their commitments that they need to deal with. And PlayStation Publishing's got a huge amount of work coming down their pipeline at the moment. It may be that they don't actively go and cut out anybody else, but it would not make sense if they didn't do the majority of the publishing of Kadokawa's
So do you think that this like deal would just be kind of more business as usual, and then like maybe like follow like a case by case, like if there's like something that relates with Sony's business interests, that they'll do it, like some publishing in this aspect?
I don't think Sony's got the ultimate control in
yeah, but you would expect them to like snoop around, like, oh, you guys want to publish this game? Can we get our hands on that?
Yeah. So a right of first refusal is probably the best way of explaining that. Is anything that Kadokawa was doing in these realms with this strategic and capital business alignment, is that the intention is that Sony's going to do that part of it, or they're going to have the first input on whether they won't do it. Now, again, it comes down to resources and capacity, but I would expect that Sony would be the first option every time on whatever's included in this arrangement, around, as I mentioned earlier, what they're going to do with IP adaptation, distribution of anime, publishing of games, You know, and look, the easy gets here is what's currently in there that they've got that they can grab, change over, publish it, and log it out through the network. And it may be that there's a huge amount of stuff sitting there that's localized for Japan only that would need to be localized for the rest of the world and then sent out. So and that, you know, and that's not just now, that's going forward as well. So if there are some games, you know, we get a Elden Ring 2, so to speak, or another DLC for Elden Ring, if it's not part of the Bandai Namco publishing arrangement, it
Nah,
might be
I believe part of the whole deal with Elden Ring was that FromSoft wanted full ownership of the IP, but Bandai just got like published the game.
yeah. That's fine. That's not. I'm not suggesting there's any.
No,
changes
so
to
I'm saying,
happen
I'm
there.
just saying, like, because like I think if like somebody was to have interest in publishing that game in the future, they probably could, but it all depends
Yeah.
if like that all depends on like what the contract was with the with Bandai. If they got like if they want to publish a second game, then they.
Oh yeah, and it may be that the DLC is included as part of the original game, and they'd have to create an entirely new title, a new game to get around that. But again, like, they're not out to screw each other. They'll
Yeah.
work well together because they all, you know, they all seem to understand that if we go for a race, if they all go in Japan, if they go for a race to the bottom, which is not part of what their social norms are, if they go for a race to the bottom to try and undercut each other, they'll kill the whole thing real quickly. But yeah, it's I suppose just to try and wrap up on the overall commentary for this is it's not gonna show up in the, I don't suspect it'll show up in the financials in its own little category. It'll be a comment here and a comment there, because this isn't the only arrangement like this that Sony has. It'll be spread out across all the different business units that are going to be affected. Specifically for gaming, it's a great opportunity for PlayStation to get access to a back catalogue that they can put in the PS Plus, and it doesn't have to be PS Plus globally. It could be, you know, a big bump of Japan only stuff if they wanted to. They could do that, but it's the current catalogue that they can, you know, upgrade for global distribution from localized Japan only, and then looking at new games coming down the pipeline that aren't currently in a contractual publishing arrangement that Sony would, or PlayStation would be the publisher for. And we've seen them PlayStation getting into publishing games that they haven't made a lot more. The benefit here, and I know I hark about this a bit, but it's a big point. Katakawa's had real trouble getting their gaming into China and getting a lot of their IP stuff into China, and PlayStation has managed to get a foothold in China.
Thanks to Tencent.
For that. Yeah. So and again, you know, you gotta play nice with your rivals sometimes. You just gotta be respectful and play nice, and you can, you know, get things that you want as long as one's not trying to rip you off.
The other interesting aspect is that I do believe Tencent is also like like a quarter percent like owner in from or Katakawa and FromSoft.
Yeah, so they've got 6.8% 6.8% ownership in Katakawa, and they've got equal percentage ownership in FromSoft.
Yeah.
As along with PlayStation, along with Sony. And that's like the investment points in FromSoft was to give them a capital injection that they needed to continue on with what they went through that period.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to lose it to what's the right way of saying this? They didn't want to have it suffering financially where it couldn't continue on to produce at the level it does. Again, the gaming segment of Katakawa is 4/5 of nothing on any given year where they haven't released a game.
Yeah.
And that's the brutal truth about it. And that's, you know, when Elden Ring released, they had a massive hit, and it was maybe peaked at just over 10% of revenue for the year for Katakawa. And that's like, when you start looking for cost cutting, that's the first place you look, is what's not making money and what's costing money. And yeah, so the investments that Tencent and Sony made in From Software specifically were basically that. I imagine the conversation would have been when the bosses got together. It was yeah, so that massive game we just released, we don't know if we can keep the studio going. And when you got someone who's producing quality like
that,
like the
yeah.
studio heads down, they do. They'll, you know, the smart thing is to go, well, how much money do you want for your next game? And let's see if we can co-fund it. Oh, well, you don't want direct game funding? Well, we'll just pump money into the studio, and there you go. So they basically bankrolled it through an equity injection for to continue on. And you know, that was back before Elden Ring released, I think,
Yeah.
from memory. So that got Elden Ring over the line. It's no different to what they did with Shift Up and funding Project Eve at the time,
I thought that
which
was more
turned
just a
into
publishing deal
Blade.
instead of like actual like investment into the company.
No, they pumped millions of dollars in to get that game finished. They got as part of that arrangement was Sony, PlayStation got the publishing deal, so they get 100% of the publishing. But they pumped a huge amount of money in to get that thing finished, and then provided PlayStation Productions and XDev support and all the rest of it to get it. And they did the same thing with Team Ninja for Rise of the Ronin. But those two were direct investments to the game rather than into the studio that was making it. So there's no equity loss there. All the risk is worn by Sony in those, or by PlayStation in those two situations where, yes, they're getting the publishing, but they've got to do the publishing, and they've invested the money in producing the game, so they've then got to make their return on investments on those games, which they have. But yeah, for the FromSoft, they needed to pump some money in to get it finished. They did. FromSoft was not interested in having, or Sony wasn't interested in putting all the money in, and Tencent came along for the ride because they wanted to distribute this thing in China, because why not? So the arrangement came out that Kadokawa didn't want to surrender their chunk of the pie, and Bandai Namco said the publishing rights to it, so there's no publishing deal to go along with the direct investment. Hence, they say, well, here it is as capital, and we'll take a share of the profits.
Yeah.
And and the way this will flow through to the financials is we won't know specifically what the outcome is from these
unless they tell us
arrangements. It'll
directly.
just show up. Yeah, unless they tell us, but it'll just show up as part of their performance in their income. And the benefit though is it won't have a spike in expenditure in any of the units, because it's they're not upsizing to cover this in any major way. It's not like they've now bought, Bungie and invested billions of dollars, and now we're going to have all this massive expenditure for the next 2 years coming through. So it shouldn't see a spike in expenditure, because it'll be covered mostly by the resources already on deck. They might hire another 20 people across the music, movies, TV, but it'll be projects as normal that'll slot into the rotation. And then in gaming, it'll be support and publishing, and that won't see a massive increase in expenditure, but what we will see is an increase in revenue as these deals come through, because Kadokawa will have to pay something.
That's what I had a feeling it would be, because it's kind of interesting to look at this like deal like in this perspective, because like you don't really see like a deal like done like this on with a company of this size unless it's just a straight out buyout. But like it'd be interesting to see like how like what the performance will actually be like in the future, because like I don't know, I just feel like there would be some benefits to like Sony in the future, like getting like some profit out of this.
Oh, anything that they publish, they will probably take 100% of the publishing for it.
Yeah.
But that means that Kadokawa will get 100% of whatever the split arrangement is from the licensing. Or it might be that they go, we'll go 50-50 on the distribution revenue, and we keep 100%. You pay us for the publishing, and we do the publishing at a cheaper deal. Like, there's multiple ways that this thing can work and work well. So but it is interesting. I will put my hand up and say I wasn't expecting to see this in the Q&A, but it is interesting that they were able to finalize it so quickly
And the fact that we're already seeing
Um,
some benefits out of this deal too.
yeah, it's happening at a really fast pace. So it's it's good to see.
Yeah.
It shows that there's appetite on both sides of this, and that it wasn't resisted to a degree, and it was done begrudgingly, like some commentators would have had you think.
Yeah.
If you had listened to them saying, "Oh, Katakawa, I'm kicking and screaming to this," no, this is.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, no, and again, it's a positive. There's no ill will or intent to stealthily acquire the whole thing, because you wouldn't put all these things in place if you're then going to acquire and assimilate the whole organization. So there is absolutely no mention of anything in here about their physical publishing of books and manga and any of that stuff.
That's probably because of the reorganization going on.
Yeah, and there's also no mention in here about their pachinko machine involvement and other stuff. So
that was actually kind of interesting, considering how Sega's kind of proud of that segment on their end, and then Konami too. I wonder if Katakawa is not as good in that side of things.
I suspect they're only invested in it because it's
it's a moneymaker for sure.
It's a money maker, but there's only a certain amount of licenses in Japan for companies who can make the damn things.
Yeah.
And they are heavily nowadays they are heavily CGI engage integration within those machines. And where they are located, Katakawa's got an awful lot of physical locations where those things are just part of what's expected at those locations. So yeah, anyway, just again, it's very specific, it's very strategic. I expect that we will get a few more things to flow through really quickly, now that they're very keen to have gotten this thing in place. And yeah, it'll.
Yeah, can't wait to see what holds this in the future, though. See what else happens from this deal, but we'll see when that happens. But
yeah, as I said, if there's an Elden Ring 2 or something like that, and Bandai Namco don't have the publishing for it, and PlayStation picks up the publishing, well then yeah, or whatever Miyazaki's working on could be interesting. So
yeah, but with that, I want to get to the final topic now. So yeah, I didn't put this in the title because I wanted to keep the title short and simple. But yeah, so yeah, recently it talked about their financials too, with the recent Dragon Age failure, how that hit their financials, and also because of something interesting I learned, which was that EA did split EA Sports and what the other division was, but that's where all their other developers fall under, with Battlefield and DICE and of course BioWare. So all their other developers fall under that category. So yeah, apparently they split their financials along with those two split divisions now. So they no longer share the same financials with each other. So whatever the EA Sports brand makes, it's their own income, and whatever the other division makes is their own income. So they no longer profit off of one another like it used to be, where if FIFA made money, it would make money for the whole entire company.
Yeah. It's interesting. Usually when splits like this happen, within 12 to 18 months, one of those two aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to be doing is highlighting a failing part or an underperforming part of your business. You would rather not do that, because then as soon as you point out that it's not doing well, questions get asked. But yeah, having them split was quite an interesting thing. I thought was probably not the smartest thing to have done, but
not for EA at least.
For it,
because at least they could hide that one of their games that would underperform thanks to the other brands.
Yeah, but I mean, and that might be the pressure that they came through. That they are pushing through to split the sports piece out, because the sports stuff does so well.
Well,
and then
that was always the
non-sport stuff doesn't.
expectation, but I guess recently, due to the release of the college football, I guess that ate into their Madden sales, and FIFA also has been kind of going down. I guess possibly due to them losing the FIFA branding name. So
Yeah.
yeah, their
Well,
sports side
look,
has been kind of underperforming.
yeah. So the split, just so I'm I suppose clear on it. So the split the gaming division in two separate entities: EA Entertainment and EA Sports. Is
Yep.
that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. So that happened back in June 23. Or was announced back in June 23. The other item that I was thinking of that you were talking about was within sports, how they've split one areas away from another.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, EA Sports is
Because-
like all their actual sports games. Plus, I believe what's it called? Codemasters falls under their sports category too, with the
Yeah.
F1.
yeah. So the just trying to think how best to approach this. Within EA Sports, so they got American football, soccer, or football, golf, the NHL, F1, all those absolute sport related ones, but then you got some of those fringe sport related ones as well.
EA doesn't really do too many of those anymore.
No, it doesn't. Then that's got some really hyper focused teams. That's where a lot of the revenue comes from. The other side to it is the side that's sort of struggling a bit. And when they did this split, they knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's probably as a result of some decisions that have been made in how they are approaching those sort of games. I mean, the new Battlefield looks interesting at the moment, and it's got an opportunity to jump in and freshen itself up and be something amazing. But it's certainly not going to do the numbers that, whatever the next FC, say FC 26 or Madden 26 or whatever it is, what they do. But you don't want, the whole questions around which one's dragging the other and how is it looking and all that sort of stuff.
Well, right now it seems like they're kind of both dragging down a bit, especially on the other side, where I believe Respawn is on the other side with like BioWare and all them, because I believe Apex was counted in those financials where it was underperforming too recently.
Yeah.
So that was a real big hit on that team.
I've still got a heap of games in that other area which are doing okay, but they're not.
But with the recent Dragon Age hit, they did specifically state that was a pretty big hit on their performance overall.
What?
EA.
Yeah, well, they were forecasting it to do really well based off the reception when they first showed it, and then the game pops out and it didn't do so well. It's not like they're they're not in the worst. They're not in a horrible spot. They're not too far off where they were.
But considering though that they did downsize BioWare down to less than 100 people, that does kind of lean towards speculation that that side might be struggling the most right now.
Yeah. Oh, they don't. And the challenging thing is that in the overall piece, they don't split them out as nice as you'd like them to be. But they've got. Sorry, I'm just quickly scanning through these again to try and refresh my memory. They've got positive cash flow. Their gross profit their gross profit was for December 2024 quarter was better than the prior year, and they're only, what's that, 40 million? No, that's not even 40 million. That's $40,000 less than the 3 months for 2023. So the financial performance is sound, but it's missing the mark on that forecasted performance.
Yeah.
That's made the big difference, and they've had a lot more go into R&D and a lot more costs in their restructuring this year than they did last year. So where's the other impact coming from? Yeah, so they've got some other non-direct operating cost pressures as well, but they're not in a bad spot compared to 2023. But that's the issue, comparing it to 2023 and 2022, where the sports games are carrying the whole thing. They've got, look, they're gonna have a decent whack when they come through to Split Fiction through EA Originals.
Wait, is that still published by EA? I thought that was published by Focus.
Is it Hazelight? Not Split Fiction.
No, it's Hazelight making the game, but it's Split Fiction that they're making.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I
thought it was Focus Home that was publishing that game, though.
I
could be wrong. I don't remember seeing a publisher name behind it. Too much.
I don't know. That's fine, because I thought at the state of play when it popped up that it had EA Original pop up before it.
Because all I remember was the Game Award announcement, but they didn't really show who was publishing it.
Split Fiction Electronic Arts.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that could be a pretty big performance on them. Then.
Well, I mean, it's the follow-up game to his last one was the game of the year, and it looks pretty
Yeah.
all right. So, and that might have an appeal that's a lot broader than people expect. But yeah. Anyway, their cash flow's all right. Their equity looks okay. They've got plenty of money on hand. Assets are going up. Debts aren't going through the roof. I mean, it's mixed. It's probably no worse than what Sega popped out with an extremely mixed result. But they're they're adding money to the bank, so that's a good thing. What's this? Subsidiaries. Oh yeah, that's manage changes. Sorry, I'm just flicking through here, seeing if I can find. Here it is. This is what I was looking for. So they had a 3% increase year on year for their full game downloads, but they had an 18% decrease in packaged arrangements. Their live service went down 3%.
Yeah, Apex took a hit, and I believe the Star Wars MMO is starting to struggle again right now.
It is, but they're still 30. So they're 1/3 full game, 2/3 live service.
Yeah,
that's where the hits are coming from when they take something in the teeth for live service. So, where's the other piece here? Total revenue percentage was all right. Net revenue by platform, console went down 1%, PC and other went down 7%. So, and mobile was down 7% for an overall down of 3%, but console's still making up 2/3 of their revenue base. So 1/3 of their games is full game sales, 2/3 is live service, 2/3 of their revenue comes from consoles. So it's an interesting dichotomy in that perspective. But yeah, they've got some cool stuff going on. Gap reporting. Sorry, I'm just flicking through the gap measures.
You're good.
Yeah.
The whole thing that was interesting to me in this aspect was that like EA was able to hide the financial performance hits from like BioWare and all those, like with the sports performance at the very least. But now that they're not able to hide that, you could kind of see that, and like in terms of like which studios are struggling right now.
Oh yeah. Even their EA Originals, the publishing division, is having some problems.
Yeah, they haven't been publishing as much as it lately either.
Yeah, and that's the issue. If you're gonna have one of those divisions to do publishing of third parties, you got to make sure that you've got you've got the content flowing through. Because if you're not publishing anything, you've just got it basically sitting still with the engine running, costing you money.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. It's I mean, as I said before, it's so they announced that they were splitting them into the 2 units in June 23. We've now seen that flush through, and we're starting to see the impacts of it, and they're starting to talk about it in an interesting way. So it's no you know, it should be no surprise that there's that they start, you know, with the BioWare trim back, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of the nice way of saying this, but basically they're gonna have to cut some stuff if they
Yeah,
want to
that's
maximize
to
their
be expected,
opportunities
of
here.
course.
So
That's to be expected, of course. But I just kind of feel bad because like before they were able to hide it, so that way they didn't have to cut as many jobs. But I'm guessing because of how like expensive it's getting too, that they probably can't like afford that anymore.
yeah, it's again challenging, and this highlights, as I said, we're talking about before, with PlayStation pulling such an amazing quarter in the current conditions, with the games that they have available that really support it. And PlayStation's revenue was like nearly 80%, 78 or 80% something third party, and they sold over 90 million games in that quarter, on top of nearly 9.5 million consoles. The impacts in other companies that sell through them is being felt, but the EA specifically is having a mixed bag with even with that kind of performance at a platform holder. EA is massively good in the games that do massively good every year, and
Well, they're one of the most massive publishers around in
yeah.
general.
And that again, that's as I was saying before, 2/3 of their revenue comes from consoles, but 2/3 of their revenue also comes from live service games.
Yeah.
They don't have a choice but to move with that. They've moved into that area, and they're dominating in that area. And yeah, the Dragon Age, the Veilguard, did not perform as they thought it would or hoped it would, but it wasn't a live service game, so the impact has been not as much as what it could have been.
Yeah, but when your sports games are starting to underperform too, that kind of does impact like.
Yes. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one though, because they released Madden, and Madden does.
Well, like I said, Madden got ate into because of their college football that they released the year prior. So
yeah, but college football was one that was just it overperformed when it was released, because so many people wanted that.
But also FIFA underperformed too recently, which they announced. So.
Yeah, but it's not a World Cup year.
Yeah.
And dropping the FIFA title in some countries has impacted that. The way they monetize that thing is, yeah, I don't particularly like it, but
oh yeah,
anyway,
of course.
I just like, why would you buy card packs for a game? And it doesn't give you anything new.
Yeah.
And I know the soccer. I know that the soccer world, the football world is a unique beast and whatnot. But
no, you're talking to a fan here, so I know how it works. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I understand how you feel.
I'm a Tottenham supporter, so you can understand my frustrations with it at the moment.
Yeah, but I know a big chunk of the players are right now upset with EA's handling of FIFA right now too, with like how, or EAFC as they're calling it, was like in terms like, they're not really doing anything to like improve like the game itself. They're just cutting corners like they always do.
Again, if this is the piece where I'd love to sit down with a head of studio or even just a head of developing team and just ask the question of, if you've got a game engine that you're not going to make massive monumental shifts with for 5 years, and you've got a game that you release every year and you charge people full whack for it, why do you release a brand new game that's just a skin update with a couple of small little
Yep.
mechanical improvements. You're basically doing day one patchwork for 2 or 3 years. Why don't you give us a brand new, this is the mechanics, this is how it works, and then just give us the team updates in that game and sell us the team updates. So I'll pay you $100 for the base game today, and you give me the roadmap of the next 3 years. This is when the season starts. I'm going to get fresh team lists and all the kit and all the rest of it licensed, and I'm only going to pay you $20. And I'll do that 6 times rather than not buy your game for 3 years. That's the reality of when they don't make a major change to the mechanics. And people who play sports games hate having to learn a new way of playing it.
Yes.
So, but I was just looking at the slides here. So they released EA Sports College Football 25 on the 19th of July, and then released Madden on the 16th of August.
Yeah.
Not even barely a month between them. Whoever signed off on that needs to be slapped up the side of the head with a bloody frozen fish. Like it's
bad.
That's nuts.
That's a bad decision making.
It's horrible. They've not, they've got Split Fiction coming in March the 6th, so in their 4th quarter. Yep. So, but that anyway, I won't dwell on that because that's just ridiculous. But even Formula One, the next Formula One game's got a bit of issue with it. They just need to. Yeah, they just Codemasters coming back on deck to do those. They've done World Rally Championship. That game is,
wait, didn't they drop it recently? The World Rally series?
Yeah, they were trying to make it, and then they just went, no, we can't fit it in. We don't want to do it, which is a shame because they were getting back to a point of it was good. And then Codemasters came on and were like, yes, finally we get one. Codemasters could be doing Formula One, World Rally. They could also do an IndyCar game if they really wanted to push North America.
Yeah, because they did recently drop their Dirt series completely, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then the Codemasters used to make the amazing TOCA games, TOCA Touring Car 1, 2. They used to make those things were brilliant. And they were fun because you could smash the cars up and it was proper racing structure. All those. Codemasters could be expanded to do 5 or 6 different racing games within EA, and they don't have to do one every year.
Yeah.
Just do them alternate years. So Formula One might be and release the base game every year, and then do the refresh for $30 the second year, and then change the new game every second year or something like that, or every third year. Or do it in alignment for when the cars change. Formula One's the cars don't change that much, so reskin the cast, reskin the liveries, change up the driver lineups, and leave the core mechanics as the same. Charge people $20 for the update. Anyone who's a fan of Formula One will pay it. So you can get around it that way by doing things slightly differently. And what that does is it changes where the cost profile of these games is, so the return on investment's better. But then you can do more games in a tighter period.
Yeah, I think EA, we should hire you for their planning.
Well, I'd be happy to take the paycheck and tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing. But again, there's multiple moving feats here, and there's challenges to every project. But it just strikes me as strange that they've got such a massive opportunities there, and they have some really awkward ways. It's almost like they're constrained by budget, rather than wanting to do better. But then you look at this financial performance, I'm like, there seems to be some safe decisions being made here in the hope that the market will just allow them to have a hit.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to be chasing it. But yeah. Now dive deep into the context around EA Sports FC temporary underperformance and immediate actions taken. FC started in Q3 a strong position, had a high launch, 1 game of the year pre-order engagement, monetization was up. Momentum did not sustain the quarter. 2 contributing factors were soft top-up funnel acquisitions and lapsed engagement in the quarter. So they pumped it out at the wrong time, and people didn't. Early adopters took it, and the people that were casuals looked at it and went, no, I'll stick with the old one until something better comes up. Yeah, post-acquisition cohorts waited longer in the cycle to acquire new games than many stayed in prior iterations. Combined play hours of full HD experience was flat, mix shifted slower. So yeah, they looked at it and went, nah, not in a hurry. I'll wait till it goes on sale.
Like I said, a lot of players are getting kind of fed up with how they're treating FIFA or this soccer, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, waiting for the Ultimate Team players to come through, and then the package deals. And which one did we get through the streaming services? Not streaming services, through the subscription service.
We got 24 recently. We got 22 and 23.
Yeah, so then, if you're going to have the old game still available for people to access that easily, where's the incentive to buy the new one? You're basically only selling to the diehards that will buy it every year. And it's the same conversation we have about COD and the same conversation we have about Madden. Every year these things come out like clockwork, and people go, yeah, great. Skip a year and see what happens. They can't afford to skip one, but it'd be bloody interesting to see what happens if they skip one. I suspect the licensing arrangements won't let them do it, but
I mean, you would think that they could, especially with they could release a Madden one year and then release FIFA the next year. Rotate between the two. Don't just release one each year for both series.
Yeah. I mean, you could get away with alternating Madden and college football.
They didn't have to release the two in the same year either.
No, they didn't. Hopefully they don't do the same thing again next year. But
it's EA. They probably will. They make decisions like that all the time. How they sandwiched Titanfall with Battlefield, Call of Duty.
Oh yeah.
It's not their first time doing that.
There's certain points where the decision makers need to just put their ego at the door and leave it alone and go, you know what? Let's not try and belt the pants off someone else and release it at the same time or within the same launch window, because that's not beneficial to anyone. There'll only ever be one winner, and the loser will lose, and no one benefits there because, sorry, I shouldn't say there'll only be one winner. Someone will appear to be the winner, but they'll both end up losing. The loser will lose more than they bargained for, because if someone's got to decide between Battlefield or COD, for example, or someone's got to decide between the full Madden game or the college football game, even though with EA it doesn't really matter because they're still getting the same money to a degree, having them right next to each other, same company or not, means that the consumer is only going to pick one.
Yeah.
So they've got to pick one, put them apart, so that if they pick one now, they can pick yours again later in 2 or 3 months' time. And that's where Sony and a lot of the Japanese publishers just make really smart decisions about, well, you're releasing there, I'm releasing here. I've got this smaller game. I'm not going to put it up against your bigger game. I'm going to release it over here, and it'll do numbers. Sometimes it's just the luck of the draw of when you're releasing something as to how well it actually sells. But more than the fans that really want it. EA's it's not in a bad spot.
Oh yeah, it's EA. They're financially one of the richest companies in gaming. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes in the future, though, considering the sports brand isn't going to be able to save the other brand like they were before.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just seeing the comments here about they're talking about the net bookings was 2.2 billion, down 6% year-over-year for that piece. Overall, Dragon Age of Valgard underperformed. Quote, the competitive dynamics of the single-player RPG market and EA Sports FC 25
I forgot about
strong,
that.
but softened through the holiday period. We saw minimal impact on FX within the quarter, with total net bookings. The full game was 633 million, down 3% year-over-year, and live service and other was down 8% year-over-year. Start with Dragon Age of Valgard. Quote, historically, blockbuster storytelling has been the primary way our industry brought beloved IP to players. The game's financial performance highlights the evolving industry landscape and reinforces the importance of our actions to reallocate resources towards the most significant and highest potential opportunities. End quote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone I saw online was going like, "Oh no, they're learning the wrong decisions again."
Yep. So they refused to accept. Well, that was their CFO, and it sounded like that was scripted. It's almost like they refused to accept the fact that they had the opportunity to make something great, because the last full Dragon Age game was a critical and commercial success. And
Well, if you kind of
storytelling
actually like look behind the scenes in terms of like how the developers were like even like handling it, it sounded like they kind of want. It seemed like they kind of wanted to just get that thing out the door, considering how long it took them to develop it. So I think
Yeah.
BioWare even at some point was kind of like, let's just get this out and over with.
Yeah, at a certain point you just get frustrated with it. From what you see and what people have played, and plenty of people have said, look, if you like Dragon Age games, it's a good Dragon Age game. If you can see past some of the
The blemishes.
But when you look at what else is available, and it's not a wrong comment to make.
Oh yeah.
Look at what else is out there in the single player RPG market. But when you get games like the Yakuza games, which are, you know,
Not even
wacky,
not even just that. Compare it to like
really
compare it to like other like Western like made games too. Like what's like that recent one from Larian. I forgot what that was called.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, when you compare it to that too, like
well, that's a benchmark game now, isn't it?
Yep.
But there's always opportunities in different ways to, I suppose, get better at. But challenges that come through from it, and saying, oh, you know, we released a game that it went into a challenging market. Like, well, they had to make the decision to make the game 3 or 4 years prior, at least, if not longer.
My hope is just this from this, like, because I know EA, they love that live service push. So if they like take the wrong lessons from this, I fear that they're gonna try to like force these studios to continue doing that live service effort, even if like it's not in their DNA to make that. Like BioWare right now is not in the place to like recover like from another hit, because like Mass Effect is the only thing that they got going for them, and I think that's probably from the brand of Mass Effect alone. But other than that, they'll probably shut down the studio if it doesn't do well, and I feel like the same will happen to DICE if the next Battlefield doesn't do well.
Yeah, well, that's the part of it is their own internal expectations versus
what's realistic.
The market will do, and what's realistic. Like, you know, some of the commentary in the back end of the Q&A here from the EA's chairman, Andrew Wilson, he's basically, and I'm paraphrasing this because I'm not going to quote it. Actually, no, I can quote this piece. Let me iterate, it's not the quarter we wanted or expected. This is regarding FC25. And underperformance in our business, particularly on a tentpole franchise like FC, we will take very, very seriously. As I think about answering the question, the thing I want to reiterate is that this will be an incredibly big FC title. It will, in all likelihood, be the second largest FC in the history of the franchise, coming off 2 years of record growth. So he's expecting the tail on this thing to wag pretty hard, but they didn't get the bump at the front end, which meant that that'll throw other plans out into disarray that they'll have to reprioritize. That's fine, but if their expectation was it was going to be massive at launch and then have the main part of it up front and then not have much of a tail, then this will have an impact on their next FC title. And he's basically saying, we're going to be the second biggest coming off 2 years of growth. Well, if it's coming off 2 years of growth and you're expecting it to stagnate, that's not great if your future projections was this thing was going to continue to grow.
Yep.
Where did you think that you were going to get more players from? Like, and this is the question that's been getting asked a lot recently for the platform holders. It's now down to the publishers. Where are you going to get more players from in a saturated market? Fair enough, there's not more football players there, but everyone who wants to play this thing is playing this thing one way or another. Where are you going to get the new attention from? So, and this is what I was saying, PlayStation having 40% of their sales in the December quarter were new to the PlayStation 5. If 20%, if half of them were new to gaming on a console, and they have an interest in playing, sports or trying something out, well, the soccer games, FC games, are a really great place to start because nearly everybody's played one. Everyone knows the game. There's another potential million and a half, 2 million units sold.
Yeah.
If they all picked it up, but
No.
that's the December quarter, and the game launched 6 months ago.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this will start affecting like the company overall. Because before, at least they were able to hide it, like we were talking about. But like since like now it's like they're no longer under one umbrella and split into two divisions, it's gonna be like, all right, we can no longer help like this division out, so we're gonna have to start cutting some jobs here and there, and then the other division starts struggling, so they're gonna have to cut the jobs on that side.
I mean, gutting BioWare, the way that they have, indicates that they're basically down to a support team.
Oh yeah.
To do whatever they're doing with that while they figure out what the next step is. Now, it would be an absolute travesty.
Well, they said that they're not even going to be recruiting right now either for BioWare, so I think they're going to stay small.
No, so not recruiting means they haven't got the next project in plan.
Yeah.
Which is indicative of whatever they thought they were going to do. Veilguard not achieving what they needed it to is had an impact on that studio. Now and the other games underperforming in that area means that they've got a right size. As I said, FC 25 having that less than stellar launch means that they've got less on the books. They've either got to borrow the money to keep doing the projects, or they got to stop doing projects.
Yeah.
This shit costs money, so. And they're pushing the Battlefield piece ahead through. Is it DICE that's working on that one?
Well, not just DICE. I think they have Vincent Pella's on that project too, leading it, and then I believe they also have what's Ghost or whoever from the Need for Speed franchise working on it too. Right. So they have quite a few developers working on Battlefield to be big.
So throwing that level of support behind a game with that pedigree of leadership to get in there and get it done, that's a big bet on one game because you're pulling multiple studios off other things to get it done. But if BioWare's not providing support for that, fair enough, it's not really their jam. But if they haven't got the next thing to move on to, no wonder they've been downsized to skeleton crew while they figure out what their next move is, because they're going to have to figure out how to fund whatever they're doing next anyway. But it would be an absolute travesty if BioWare was to just be shut down.
Yeah. And EA is no stranger to shutting down studios.
No, it's not. It's not. And the long pedigree that they've got. But again, the studio is one thing. The branding on the studio is one thing.
Yeah.
It's the people working there that make the difference.
And a lot of them are gone now too.
A lot of them are gone. They no wonder that you look at Dragon Age Inquisition, and then you look at Dragon Age Veilguard. Veilguard's supposed to be a continue on from Inquisition, but geez, they don't even come close to feeling like one's a sequel to the other.
Yeah.
In the story writing and whatnot. Now the mechanics of the gameplay, again, this is from my limited playtime with it. I only played a few hours of it, but looking at the commentary from other people that I trust with their comments and perspectives on games like this, because they play an awful lot of them. The impact of the story writing was not as to the level that was expected or required. There were some elements in the storytelling that were a bit left a bit to be desired. That's individual perspectives on that. The gameplay was solid. There wasn't a huge amount of bugs in it, even though there shouldn't have been any when it came out, but there wasn't anything really buggy with it. But it just was not going down the same. It's like they were going this way with Inquisition, then they went back the other way with Veilguard.
Yeah.
If you've got something, I'll call it it's moving from down that pathway to changing and going a different direction down a different pathway. sometimes the pivot doesn't always get you the result that you want. Sometimes it's better to just improve on what was there before. It's like the Spider-Man 2 lesson. Spider-Man from Insomniac was pretty decent. Spider-Man 2 was an improvement on what was pretty decent.
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of sequels that you can say, well, this is just an improvement on what was already there. The whole Uncharted series is an improvement on what was already there. All the Yakuza games are small changes to a very familiar platform, and those things, they don't sell tens of millions of copies every time they come out, but they manage to get a few million units sold every time they release something, and do quite successfully off it. So, but if you're launching a game into a saturated competing market to begin with, not just for other single player RPG games, but for all games in a challenging environment,
you need to step out the quality at that point.
Yeah, they really do need to consider what their internal expectations are for some of these things, because
EA's expectations have always kind of been unrealistic to a degree.
Well, you see the commentary a lot where they go, it's underperformed what we expected. So Square Enix,
similar to Square.
Great. Didn't do what we thought it would do. What did you think it was going to do? You're not the only one that's operating in this marketplace anymore in those types of games. But anyway, I'll stop prattling on about it. But it's just, they really need to, from my perspective, not just the publishers, but a lot of people across gaming on all sides, so the makers, the platform holders, the consumers. There is just so many games and so much opportunity with technology for people to just make games and put them out there, that the benchmark levels for quality and what people are prepared to put their money into, the benchmark gets higher the more there is, because there's just more to choose from. So like you said, Baldur's Gate 3, bang, there's the benchmark for storytelling single player RPG in that style. You got JRPGs that have got a really high benchmark in them now. Action games have got a high benchmark. Sports games, well, if EA is the only one who's doing sports games, well, then it'll just be compared to the
not
previous
just EA, because Take-Two or 2K does the sports too with with golf and NBA.
NBA and that. They suffer the same issue as EA does with their sports games. Is the current year game better than the previous year game, and why should I spend more money on it? And once the diehard fans have gotten the new version, they'll always get it day one.
What's funny about that too is the fact that like EA and 2K are so guilty of that, but like I see no complaints for Sony and their MLB series. Like it seems like Sony's like untouched by that criticism.
You know what the funniest thing about Sony doing MLB is that thing gets absolutely curb stomped every year by that weeby bloody baseball game that
I see that online.
Every year it gets pummeled by that thing. It's hilarious. Anyway, I mean, I think PlayStation hold on to that arrangement. It does decent. It's a churn and burn, but it does all right. There's a segment of people who love playing that game, and unfortunately it is what it is. But just to draw a comparative, you said with Take-Two and EA, Take-Two is in a world of hurt at the moment.
Surprisingly,
and they really need to get some stuff out the door. And man, GTA 6.
I think that Zynga deal probably was what hurt them.
Zynga is. They took a $2.something billion write down on it last year, and it's still causing them grief this year. So and like the projections at the moment I'm looking at is from the last couple of years, GTA 6 is going to it's got heavy lifting to do. And I say that it's got to pull back like $4 billion worth of losses to the share.
Well, that's why I'm kind of thinking like that a lot of that's probably going to come down to the online aspect if they can sell microtransactions again. That's where they make a lot of like bread and butter.
They don't worry about them having a hand in your pocket trying to get your wallet. The other hand in your pocket trying to take off other things, a kidney and a liver and a few other bits and pieces to sell. So, but EA, I mean, 2/3 their revenue comes from live service, and that's the area that's
And now that that's split too, it's gonna be interesting to see in the future. Because right now, Respawn's struggling keeping Apex numbers up. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but they're getting aged.
Yeah.
Apex Legends is not
It's
getting
it's
the
old,
level
but like they always found something new to keep it fresh. That was a thing with Apex.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tricky one.
Yeah.
Because it's the benchmark of updates is Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
For live service shooters, and then you've got Apex Legends, Valorant, and all these other different PUBG and all the rest of them. You think about how much Epic pours into Fortnite, and if they slowed down that cadence of release, how much people would disengage with
struggle.
That game. It would fall off a cliff. For EA to be able to put even half that level of commitment into Apex Legends to keep pushing it forward would take a phenomenal amount of reinvestment.
Yeah.
And that's why Bungie was providing that advice to Naughty Dog. If you want to make a live service game and you want to keep people engaged, you've got to throw 1,000+ people at this thing for life, and you can't focus on anything else. And 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 people just to keep this thing going. And that's where Naughty Dog went, yeah, no, fuck that. We don't want to do that because we're storytellers. We're not bloody online game service makers. And Sony was not prepared to fund an internal studio just to keep that going. And rightly so. They don't have the funds and time to dedicate to that, even by having, if they had Bungie looking after both of them.
Yeah.
So now they've got the problem of, well, they get Marathon out the door and whenever it happens, and support that for 12, 18 months, 2 years while they figure out what Destiny 3 looks like, because you don't want to.
I think the pivot to Marathon is probably the wrong choice, considering that IP has been dormant for who knows how long at this point, since it's been like since that IP was practically when Bungie was like independent still from Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean it's an extraction shooter, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's still a very niche genre right now. That's still kind of like in its infancy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, all they're trying to figure out what.
I think the big pivot should have been to Destiny 3, to be honest.
It should have been, but then it's how much longer can they get? What kind of legs are left in Destiny 2?
Well, Destiny 2 didn't have that long of a legs, too, to be fair, because and especially with the game engine aging as is, and them struggling to put in new content and having to take out old content. That wasn't gonna last.
And I mean, if Destiny 3 ends up in the Decima engine, or it's in UE5, or whichever one they end up using, there's opportunities there, but that's 12, 18, 24 months of just to move the assets over. So I can understand if they get Marathon out and it lasts 2 or 3 years and it keeps the core team together, then fine. That's probably why they're doing it. But they're talking about movie tie-ins and animation tie-ins and all this other TV production stuff that Bungie wanted to do with the Destiny.
Well, that was years ago, and we still haven't seen anything from that.
And that was one of the key reasons why they agreed to the deal with PlayStation or with Sony. And they've basically been gutted out because they were unable to perform to the metrics that they promised that they could do. So they've effectively been gutted out. And if Marathon was what they wanted to do, and if Bungie ends up finishing on where they started, well, so be it. But Destiny 3 is going to take an awful lot of work and background and pre-production to get it right.
Yeah.
And it's not like they don't have the talent and the skill over there around them in PlayStation as a whole, or SIE as a whole now, to be able to pull it off. What they don't have is the personnel.
That's a whole nother discussion we could have probably for another video.
It is.
But
so anyway, I've just looped back around to my point. Apex, Battlefield, like if they're throwing that much firepower at Battlefield to get it up and running again, Apex, it's no wonder that that's suffering. But they can't let that fall off.
Yeah, that's a moneymaker for EA too.
Focus. It is. So And this is where the challenge is, when in a marketplace where you're potentially stripping market share, not just off someone else, but off yourself. So you're not actually generating an improvement. Do you really need to be doing that? So,
Yeah. And that's the thing that always scares me with EA. So I that's why I kind of wanted to talk about this because, like, you know, EA can really pivot hard when they decide to, and when they do, it's kind of ends up badly for others.
oh yeah,
Uh, but
their knee-jerk reactions are something to behold, and aren't they?
yeah, but I guess with that, I guess wrap things up here because it's already getting pretty late and I'm getting pretty hungry. So lunchtime
Yeah.
over here. But
Sorry for
It's-
holding you on for so long. I didn't realize.
no, you're
what the
good. This
time
is just
was.
a good
My
discussion to
apologies.
have because, like, the whole EA thing is just like interesting because, like, they're a leader in the gaming industry in terms of how much money they make. So seeing what happens with them is kind of interesting to, like, overall because, like, what they do also impacts the industry.
Yeah, they're a pillar.
Yeah.
Is one way of putting it.
Yeah. I guess we'll leave it there. But thank you for tuning in for another episode, and thank you again for having a good discussion, David.
No, pleasure to be here, and thank you to those that are listening now and in the future, and enjoy.
Yeah. Tune in for more. Bye.